Hello, my beautiful children. I've missed you. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Miss Vega Says What. My name is Priscilla Vega. I've been a public school teacher for nearly 20 years. So the kids know me as Miss Vega. This channel is for kids and it's called Miss Vega Says What. Besides being a veteran teacher, I'm currently finishing a degree in psychology. Even though it may not seem related, this episode is a bit of a follow-up to the last episode that I posted called Why is Everybody Always Talking About Loving Yourself? You'll probably see me looking down a lot in this one because it is a tender subject and I want to look at my notes and be accurate and mindful. In that episode, I was speaking to how practices of loving oneself or self-love helps us with feelings of disappointment, but it was in reference to an academic setting. In this episode, I'll be speaking to loving yourself or how self-love can help you in disappointments within the home setting. And the truth be told, this is going to be a harder episode because I am speaking to divorce and separation. As I mentioned in the previous video, loving oneself is really about practicing thoughts that soothe and comfort our body when we're experiencing difficult feelings. In the home, even if we don't think so, or even if we want to disagree, when we feel feelings of disappointment within the home, they're actually going to feel bigger and more consuming. Whereas if you're feeling disappointment from something that's happened in school or an athletic performance, maybe it's going to be maybe in your head and sometimes in your body if you keep thinking about it, but you can let it go in different settings. Like if you can sleep it off maybe, or if you're having fun with your friends, you kind of let it go. Whereas disappointment in the home, it's going to give you a mental feelings, and it's also going to be in your body. So it's going to be an embodied disappointment, and that travels with you. It goes wherever you go, right? So like you might be at school and start having feelings that give you thoughts about things going on in your house, or even if you're having fun at a friend's house, if you're still for a moment, those thoughts will come back. So it stays with you, right? But the reason I say that the videos are related is because in both of them, the antidote to this is a practice of self-love or loving oneself. And an antidote just means that it's something that counterparts or soothes poison. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to begin by humanizing your parents, okay? And what I mean is this: we often use words like good and bad or positive and negative. So we look at parents like that, right? And so we're going to begin by humanizing your parents. And I'm going to tell you a truth, and it's kind of a hard truth. But your parent is actually not experiencing disappointment. What they're really truly experiencing is grief. And I think as a kid, we hear the word grief, right? And we're just barely learning vocabulary as it is anyway. So we hear the word grief and we mean it in response as to someone has died, when in actuality it means something has died. And so remember, we're humanizing your parent, who is represented right here. And these are not judgments. Grief is a very heavy feeling. In spiritual literature, it's often referred to as a dense feeling, okay? So we're going to think about grief, your parents' grief, if they're experiencing a divorce or separation, and density, right? So you're going to think about water. Water seems like it should be light, but if you were actually to fill a bucket of water, it's super heavy. So we're going to do a little bucket of water here, right? That we're going to suppose, or probably like a deeper bucket that we're going to suppose that your mom or your parent is carrying. And you're also going to think of water because when we think of water, we use the word clear. But if we're looking through water or if we're underwater trying to see through it, it's not clear. And even if the water is clear, the way our perception is distorted, okay? Okay, so when somebody is experiencing grief, your parents, who are humans rather, and your parents are human, are experiencing grief, it is very heavy, right? Within their bodies, they're carrying the water, so it's heavy and it's going to cause some brain fog. But you as a child viewing them, this is just a natural human response. So just the way we're not judging your parent, we're not going to judge you either, right? But a child whose parent is experiencing that, because there is so much going on, you start to internalize it by making up stories like, oh, she can't see me, or she can't help me through my own pain and through my own feelings. But I'm going to turn it now to the kid, right? I know a lot of parents, when they're in this situation, kid, now I'm talking to you or about you, your parents are going to say things like, it's not your fault, or I just want you to be happy, I'm doing, things like this. So I'm going to explain how those phrases are really your parents trying to encourage you to love yourself, but there's just a disconnect in age group, I guess. So as a teacher, what I've seen is kids, when your parents are divorcing or separating or something is going on in the home, the thing is, as teachers, we see all of you guys. We can see what your faces are doing and what your energy is doing. And so what I've seen as a teacher is that when the kid in this experience goes through a season where you guys are zoned out, okay? And especially if like your teacher's explaining something super hard and it's already a bummer on your brain, you zone out. And a teacher's secret is teachers often know, like, oh, so-and-so is kind of zoned out and a little bit withdrawn. We often know that it's because of a hard change within your home. So what I mean by that is that your parent is giving you comforting words, right? Like, it's not your fault, I just want you to be happy. But you, kid, are unsure how to use that as a tool. Because when they do that, when they tell you it's not your fault, or I just want you to be happy, whatever it is that they're saying to comfort you, they're actually giving you a tool and a script, but then you're going to have to use it for yourself, right? Which is, again, self-love. I've actually asked kids who have been my students, right? Like when I see them in this zoned out and they start telling me about their parents, and you guys are always like trying to figure it out, going through stories of how it went wrong or how you could have saved it or how you could have been different. So when you're doing that, you're actually not reciprocating love to your parent, because they've already explained to you it's not your fault, you can't do anything about it, I just want you to be happy. But it's a natural human response, right? So we're not judging the parent, and I'm not judging you if you often sit in class and you start repeating stories about how it is your fault. And for some of you guys, you'll even have a response right now in your brain like, no, I know she means that for other people, but for me, in my case, it's totally my fault, and my situation is different. But really, that's still the same monster that you're needing to tackle with self-love. Okay, so we're looking at these two people, right? You and your parent. And you guys are individual people, but you are connected because there's an exchange of family. When you're a family, there's like an energy exchange, whether you want to believe that or not. But I've explained to my kids in the past that you can sense that energy exchange within your family, like when one of your parents comes home. Like if you're home and you're waiting on one of your parents to come home from work, and then they come home and the energy changes within the room, that's because you guys are sharing and exchanging familial energy, right? Okay, so your parents have told you it's not your fault and things like this, and you're kind of sitting in math class and you're thinking of all these stories and all the ways that you went wrong, okay? But you guys are sharing an energy field. So when your parent says that it's not your fault or whatever it is that they're comforting you with, this is actually an expression of love. It's love as a verb, okay? And So when they're saying that to you, right, it's not your fault, that's them giving you love, but it then becomes your responsibility. And the first thing you want to do is believe them. If your parent says it's not your fault, or you couldn't do anything, or everything's going to be okay, it then becomes your responsibility to recognize that they gave you a tool and a skill. And the first step in using that tool and skill is believing them. So, okay, so you're sitting in class, right? And the story pops up, or your feelings, right? Because it's an embodied feeling. When there's grief in this way in the home, it's an embodied feeling. So you guys are in class and the story starts popping up and you start trying to figure out where you went wrong. Those thoughts make your body feel bad, right? And your mom or your parent does not want your body to feel bad. That's why they say it's not your fault and things like that, because they want your body not to feel bad. Okay, so you need to believe them, and you're going to use whatever it is, the script that your parent says to you. I know I keep repeating it's not your fault because that's really all that can come to my mind. And I don't want to make it, about that, I guess. But you're going to start repeating that, right? First step, believe them. Okay, I'm sitting here in math class. I'm about to start that feeling about all the things that my parents are doing. But first step, I believe my mom, my parent, they said it wasn't my fault. You might need to even take a breath and start thinking those same thoughts. And in that previous video about loving yourself, I said that if you have a difficult time not beating yourself up or not thinking thoughts that make your stomach feel bad, you're going to start conjuring up a loving person. In this case, your parent, right? You're going to conjure them up in your mind, and they can't be with you at school. So you have to believe their words and use them as a script and a tool to cope when they're not there. I do want to say that this is really hard, okay, kids? So if you feel like, I don't think this is going to do it for me, you're going to have to try at least one time and see if it lightens the feelings within your chest, because I might be explaining it with cartoons and stuff, but it's actually hard when you practice it within the body and you have math class or whatever stimulus. It's going to be hard practice. So I do want to mention that it is hard work. It's not going to be a one time and I'm cured type of situation, right? But remember, it is an antidote, because this is sort of poison when you're having these thoughts to yourself, like, oh, it is my fault and how could I fix it? If it's making your body feel bad, then that's the poison. I want to say also that, let me see what my notes say. Hold on. Okay, so I don't want to scare you, but there is a surprise. You guys are also holding a bucket of grief, okay? And so I would say, let this make you yourself feel better. If you're really having a hard time with your parents' divorce or separation, recognize that it's really beyond just disappointment or sadness. It's actual grief, and it's heavy, and it makes you think in unclear ways. So I also want to add that you're not the goal when you're doing things like this, when you're bringing up your mom's words that she said it wasn't your fault and that she loves you and stuff like that, your goal isn't to make yourself feel good. Your goal is to make yourself feel less crappy each time, because the zoned out kids, I knew they felt crappy, right? So you have to start thinking thoughts like, oh, I feel less crappy in my body than when I'm thinking about that thing that I did that made it my fault, or the thing that I am that makes me not good enough, right? So since you are also holding a bucket, when you do things like this, it's not going to make your bucket go away, but it is going to take maybe a teaspoon of water out of that weight. Maybe it'll take a tablespoon out of water, right? And so it'll be less heavy. And because you guys do share an energy field, your parent will be able to sense that lightness in your load, and it'll also lighten their load because you're part of their load. And so that's basically it. I do want to say that it's a practice of self-love, right? So use those tools that your parents said. It's not your fault. We're going to get through this. And just recognize that the moment you're going through is really difficult. I also want to say that I do wonder if kids are going to, or if you kids are going to watch this video and be like, oh crap, now I have to have like this long conversation with or this big talk with my parent. Or if your parent is standing next to you and you're feeling awkward. I want to speak to that as well, because kids, kids, you actually are not needing to do all that, right? So sometimes you refrain from seeking comfort from your parents because you think it has to be a big old talk, and it doesn't. So if any of this resonated for you, which means that you felt connected to it in some way, or you felt like, oh, that was me once, then you don't have to have a big talk with your parent, but you can show them this video and give them a hug, because it is an embodied feeling. The hug will relieve that for you. Or if by chance you're watching this with a parent right now and it feels too much, you're not going to judge yourself. Oh, it feels too much. I don't even want to look at them right now, because this is true. All you have to do is squeeze their hand, and then they'll know where you are, right? And you guys will be sharing the weight. You'll be able to help each other carry that weight. And that's a practice of self-love, and it's also a practice of love.